The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days straight. It fell relentlessly over the small town of Cedarfield, washing away the dust but not the pain in people's hearts. Among them was Grace Miller, a young woman who stood under the flickering neon sign of a diner, holding a worn-out umbrella that was just as tired as she was. Her shoes were soaked, her coat was thin, and her hands trembled, not from the cold but from fear. Inside the diner's window, she could see people laughing, eating, living. She pressed her palm against the glass and whispered, "One day, maybe I'll have this too." She was a cleaner at a local motel, earning barely enough to feed her little brother, Ben, who was only 9. Their parents had died in a car crash 2 years ago, leaving behind nothing but debts and a few photographs. Grace had dropped out of college to raise Ben, working double shifts and skipping meals just to keep the lights on. Life hadn't been fair to her, but she refused to complain. She had hope, fragile as a candle flame in a storm, but still burning. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of people who never give up, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps stories like this one reach more hearts. One chilly evening, Grace was finishing her shift at the motel when she saw a man struggling with his car near the parking lot. The hood was up, steam rising from the engine, and his frustration was evident. Despite being exhausted, Grace approached him with a small flashlight. "Need help?" she asked softly. The man looked up, startled by her presence. He was tall, wearing a simple gray coat, and his eyes carried the kind of tiredness that comes from working too much and sleeping too little. "I think it overheated," he said with a sigh. Grace leaned in, checked the engine, and pointed out a loose hose. "You'll need to tighten that before you drive again," she said. He smiled, surprised at her knowledge. "You sound like a mechanic," she shrugged, smiling shyly. "No, just someone who's had to fix a lot of things alone." Her words lingered in the air longer than the sound of the rain. He thanked her and asked for her name. "Grace," she said. "Grace Miller." He extended his hand. "Ethan Cole." She didn't know it then, but that small moment, under the weak streetlight with rain dripping from her hair, was the beginning of something that would change both their lives forever. The next morning, Ethan returned to the motel, not as a guest, but as the owner of the chain itself. Grace was mopping the lobby floor when she saw him walk in with a group of managers. Her heart skipped. She froze, unsure if he'd even remember her. But he did. He smiled directly at her, not as a businessman greeting an employee, but as someone seeing a familiar light in a dark room. After the meeting, he asked her to come to his office. Grace walked in nervously, holding her old notepad like a shield. Ethan looked at her file, then at her. "You've been working here for almost 3 years. Never missed a shift. That's rare." She nodded, unsure what to say. He leaned forward. "You once told me you've had to fix a lot of things alone." "I admire that," Grace blushed. "You remember that?" "Of course," he replied softly. "People like you are hard to forget." He offered her a position as his personal assistant for a week, while his regular assistant was on leave. Grace hesitated. "Sir, I'm not qualified." "I don't even own proper clothes for an office." Ethan smiled kindly. "You don't need fancy clothes, Grace. You just need your heart and honesty. That's worth more than a wardrobe full of suits." His words hit her harder than she expected. For the first time in years, someone saw her not for what she lacked, but for what she was. She accepted the offer. The following week was a whirlwind. Grace tried her best to keep up with Ethan's demanding schedule. She made mistakes, spilled coffee once, forgot a call another time, but her sincerity never faltered. Ethan noticed her efforts, the way she treated everyone with respect, even the janitors and kitchen staff. She had a quiet strength that inspired people around her. One evening after a long business meeting, Ethan asked if she'd join him for dinner at a local charity gala. Grace froze again. "Sir, I can't. I don't have fancy clothes." Her voice cracked slightly as she looked down at her shoes. They were old, the soles worn thin. Ethan smiled gently, the same way he had that night in the rain. "You don't need them," he said. "Just come as you are." Grace's eyes filled with tears she didn't want him to see. No one had ever said something like that to her. No one had ever made her feel that her presence alone was enough. That night, she went home and told Ben. He grinned from ear to ear. "You're going to a fancy party, Grace. You'll be the prettiest one there." She laughed, hugging him tightly. "I'll try my best." At the gala, Grace walked in wearing her simple blue dress, the same one she wore to church on Sundays. It wasn't designer or expensive, but it carried warmth and decency. People turned to look at her, not because of what she wore, but because of the quiet confidence she carried. Ethan stood beside her, proud, when someone whispered that she looked too plain for such an event. Ethan simply said, "She's perfect the way she is." Throughout the night, Grace watched Ethan interact with people, polite, composed, but distant. She could see he was a man who lived surrounded by luxury, but starved for real connection. When they stepped outside for some fresh air, she said softly, "You seem lonely, Mr. Cole." He smiled faintly. "It's hard to find people who don't see the money first." Grace nodded. "I see the man who helped a stranger with a broken car." That made him laugh. It was a rare sound, deep and genuine. From that moment, something began to change between them. He started inviting her to more meetings, asking her opinions, sharing his stories of childhood, how he grew up poor too, and how success came at the cost of peace. Grace listened, and in her quiet way, she became the peace he had been searching for. Weeks passed. Grace's confidence grew. She started wearing her smile more than her worries. Ethan noticed how the office felt brighter when she was around. When Ben fell sick one day, Ethan personally drove them to the hospital and waited outside until the doctor said he'd be okay. That night, Grace sat beside Ben's bed, tears rolling down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from gratitude. In the days that followed, rumors began to spread around the office. Whispers that the boss had fallen for the cleaner-turned-assistant. Grace tried to ignore them, but one afternoon she overheard a few colleagues mocking her. "She probably thinks she's special just because the boss smiles at her." Another laughed, "Wait till he gets bored." Grace ran to the restroom, locked the door, and cried silently. She wasn't angry, just hurt. When she came out, Ethan was waiting in the hallway. He saw her red eyes and didn't need to ask. "Grace," he said softly, "never let the noise of others silence the truth of who you are." She nodded, but he could see her spirit trembling. To cheer her up, he took her to an orphanage the next day where his foundation sponsored meals. Watching Grace kneel down and feed the children melted something inside him. She wasn't just kind, she was light in human form. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, Ethan whispered, "Grace, you've reminded me of something I forgot a long time ago." She looked at him curiously. "What's that?" He smiled. "That goodness still exists." That night, Grace found herself thinking about him, not as her boss, but as the man who saw her heart before her clothes, her worth before her status. It scared her, the way her heart skipped when she thought of his smile. She told herself it was impossible. He was wealthy, powerful. She was a nobody from a broken home. But love doesn't ask permission. It simply grows where it's meant to. A few days later, the motel chain hosted an annual employee dinner. Grace almost didn't go, afraid of standing out again. But when she walked in, wearing the same blue dress and a gentle smile, Ethan was already waiting by the door. He offered his hand. "Dance with me?" She hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know how." He smiled. "Then I'll teach you." As they danced slowly under the soft lights, surrounded by people who once doubted her, Grace felt something she hadn't felt in years, belonging. For the first time, she wasn't the girl struggling to survive. She was simply Grace. And in that moment, Ethan leaned close and whispered, "You don't need fancy clothes, Grace. You shine without them." Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at him. The world around them blurred. All the pain, all the years of loneliness seemed to fade. He didn't need to say he loved her. She could see it in the way he looked at her, like she was the one thing he'd been searching for all along. Months later, Ethan and Grace started working together on a charity project to help single mothers find employment. She became the heart behind his foundation, touching countless lives. And every time she stood before a crowd, wearing her same simple dress, she reminded everyone that grace doesn't come from what you wear. It comes from who you are. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Every small act of kindness spreads hope in the world, and your support keeps these stories alive. Special request? Comment below with one word that describes what this story made you feel. Hope, faith, love, or kindness. Because sometimes all it takes is one smile, one kind word, and one person who says, "You don't need fancy clothes. You just need to be you."